Hello, it's Steve Dickinson here, and this is Presenting Confidence. Right, so before lunch, anybody remember what we did? Yeah, just before lunch we were talking about niche, entering the conversation that they're already having in their mind, expanding that conversation, and that's where your credibility comes from. You might have just only been going a month or so, but if you can join them in that conversation, let them know that you understand their pain and that you have the challenge that they're experiencing, the consequences of that challenge, the coping methods that they have in place in order to cope with those consequences, and the fact that you've got a cure. The fact that you've got a cure, they think, well, that actually, considering that nobody else has been able to understand what I'm going through as well as this person, and they say they've got a cure, well, that sounds perfect. Also, we looked at presentation structure, the introduction, intro, interest, need, title, range, objectives, INTRO, and the fact that the objectives are what do you want them to actually do as a result of this conversation. And the same thing goes with children or partners. If you actually think, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve? This is something my eldest daughter mentions when I start talking something, and she says, Dad, what are you trying to achieve by saying this? I think, oh, actually, I'm just whining, aren't I? This is not.
T and R, you said?
Pardon?
Intro, T and
Yeah.
R.
Introduction.
Introduction. Interest,
Need, title, range, a range of things you can talk about, and objectives.
Sorry.
That's okay. Then we looked at your audio logo. What do you say when someone asks you what you do? And there's a four-part structure of, I work with this kind of person who experiences this kind of problem. I help them with this kind of solution, and the results they get are. So, who do you work with? What problem do they have? What do you help them do? What results do they get? And then we expanded that into the elevator pitch, which adds 3 extra things. Who do you work with? What problem do they have? What makes you credible? What process do you take people through? What results do they get? A success story, and then a call to action. And you can do that in 1 minute. It is much better if you can get a few seconds extra. I mean, I've been looking at the watch and going, oh man, I've gone 10 minutes over. I know I'm going to get beeped off. What can I strip out? But I'll tell you, if you do try and fit it into a minute, and each time you try it, you're up a minute and 30 seconds, well, I know you'd love to have all that information in there, but it might be better. You might be able to hold people's attention better if you can make it more concise. Maybe drop something that you're really holding up, but I just so much want to tell them. Well, maybe you can tell them later. But if you've only got that 1 minute. So what else do we look at? Presentation structure, audio logo. We also looked at this stimulation, memory, emotion, response, termination, and evaluation. Looking at the stimulation bit, we have our senses. We can see, we can hear, we can touch and feel, we can smell, and we can taste. Now, very often people will talk in those terms. It's very rarely that you get people talking about smell and taste. But I do remember on one occasion, had someone saying, as a project office, we are going to present each of our clients with a menu. And the flavors on this menu will vary dependent on what their office or their department does. So it's the only time I've ever heard someone talking in terms of flavor and taste and smell. Mostly people will talk about, oh, it was just brilliant. Can you just imagine it? Their primary representation system, the way they work, the way their brain works, is primarily visual. But you get someone say, oh dear, I love the sounds of that. That sounds great. Yeah, I can hear where you're coming from here. Well, you know that their primary representation is auditory. And then you'll get someone who says, no, I can't really get a handle on that. I'm not feeling that yet. Now, in this situation, really what I should be doing is I should be saying the same thing in 3 different ways. Can you imagine what it'd be like to get that wonderful feeling as you hear the people applauding you after the presentation? So image, feeling, sound. So if you are going to do a presentation, saying the same thing 3 times is not being boring. It's just helping out the people in the audience that don't have the same representation system as you. Of course, as soon as we get this, these sounds and smells, and because smell actually uses a different route to your limbic system, to your or to the brainstem, than everything else, because smell is so important for survival for animals. You get that, well, even for us, you get that. I can smell burning. You know, you instantly are feeling it. You don't. There's not as much brain processing for you to react to a smell, and that's why smells are very. You know, I'd smell coconut, and instantly I'd be taken back to my holidays in Devon. Coconut oil. You know, obviously people don't do that anymore. Well, at least they shouldn't. But that smell of coconut would take me straight back to an image of hanging around the cafe at Salt and Sands in Devon, a great surfing beach. Thing is, when we look at our memory and we go back and check our full bandwidth, 7 ± 2 imagery or things that we're thinking about, or the down and dirty little thumbnails, we're still thinking in terms of pictures and smells and sounds and feelings. And the feeling, I think, is the strongest. Just on a brief aside, one of the neuro-linguistic programming skills that I used this particular process on someone who was buying too much from a farmer's market. So she wasn't doing her presentation right, because when she got up to the farmer's market, his face would light up. You go, oh gosh, she's going to buy a whole load of stuff. Try this, try that, try this. I've got something else for you. And she bought too much, was ending up throwing a lot of it away at the end of the week because it was going off. Their family just couldn't eat that much fresh fruit and vegetables. So it got to the point where she was actually hiding it. She'd hoard it somewhere, and when no one was looking, she'd go out and dip it in the bin. Now, it worked out that she had a buying strategy that went through, first of all, seeing the face of a particular owner, a stall owner or farmer, and him smiling. She get that nice feeling, oh, there's a friend, I've spoken to him before, I've really enjoyed his stuff. She gets up there, sees the stuff, she gets to taste and smell it, gets another great feeling, and then makes a decision to buy. So what I ended up doing was, I said, when you first see the person, I want you to think of the rotting stuff in your fridge. So we went from that image to another image of rotting fruit. And then back to the stuff, getting the smell of things, and then really enjoying it, and then the smell of the fruit as she threw it away. So just by changing her strategy, changing the way that she went through this continual buying process, she presented herself differently. She was able to communicate effectively, look, much as I know you want to sell me everything on here, I can't do it. And pretty soon my family are going to ban me to come into this market because I'm wasting money and I'm wasting your food. So she was able, by going through that, understanding the way that her brain automatically worked, the strategy she had for making the decision to buy, understanding that enabled her to communicate it effectively. So she was able to explain her objectives. I'm only going to buy enough for the family for this week, and it'd be wrong of me to waste your food. And so there was a different presence. She presented herself differently. Now, all of this, when you think about it, we're all alive, I think. We're alive. We have got some kind of life energy. I know this has got an energy, but it's not alive. It's still fizzing away there, all the atoms and molecules doing their thing. We're different insofar that we are alive. We've got a life energy, and I don't pretend to understand the brain's connection to the subatomic world. I don't know if that grass out there is aware that it's grass. I know I'm aware I'm alive. I know I'm aware of what's going on around me. I'm consciously aware of what's going on. And I know I've got the power to think, because sometimes I can think something and I'll just feel great. Oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing my granddaughter. I haven't seen her for ages. I get to see her. Oh, yes, it feels great. Same with the grandson. I just don't know him so well. I do now. When he first turned up, I was thinking, man, I don't know this little kid anywhere near as well as I know the other. But I know I can also think some really depressing and unhelpful thoughts. Now, did I mention? I think I mentioned Aaron Turner this morning with his quote, "Never." What was it? Never tell you something. I know him. Never something when you want. Never listen to yourself when you're worried. That was it. Never what with yourself. Never listen to yourself when you're worried. Because that worry, that feeling of worry, is your body telling you that you're gearing up for something dangerous. So effectively, we take the energy of our minds, imagine going to the cinema. Without the light behind you, without that energy, you don't have an experience of going to the cinema. Without the film, or whatever digital thing they use nowadays, but let's run with film. Without the film in front of that light, you don't have an experience of going to the cinema. And without the screen being there, there's nothing to project it onto. So you don't have an experience of going to the cinema. So that's why in the American drive-thrus, when it started raining, you couldn't see the screen. So you'd get a rain check and be able to go back free next time. Did you know that there's the origin, the expression, I'll take a rain check on that? Oh, well, there you go. Full of great information. It's going to be really useful in future. So, if there was something on the screen that I didn't like, it was just too horrific, I could shout at the screen. I don't think that's going to help. I could run up there and claw at the screen. I could maybe go running up there and unplug the projector. Or I could ask the projectionist to put on fluffy bunnies instead. Now that's probably the easiest one. Ask the projector to do something. It's a projectionist to put something else up there that is less frightening. But the weird thing about going to the cinema is we know that it's that it's just a cinema. We know it's not real, but we can suspend our disbelief and enjoy an exciting film. We can suspend our disbelief in it and think, okay, well, I'm going to be swept along by the story, but I still know it's not a problem. I'm going to be safe. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I heard the very first film done by the Lumiere brothers, I think, in a cafe in France. They had a train. They rigged it up. I think it was a cafe, maybe a small theatre. But they put up the screen, and it was a picture of a train coming in, or a film of a train coming into a station. A lot of the people got so worried they were going to get hit by a train, they left the room. Orson Welles he decided to do War of the Worlds when they did it on the BBC radio, as a BBC radio series. They did it in the form of a newscast. It was explained at the beginning, it wasn't the BBC, sorry, this is in New York, so I don't know why I said BBC. It was explained at the beginning that it was a drama, but people who switched on, had missed the first 5 minutes, really thought the world was being attacked by aliens. They were completely engaged in this terrible world. The people going grabbing their rifles and running out of the streets. Of course, people phoning up the police, and after a while, the police understood what was going on, and they're saying, it's all right. It's just your child you're chasing. And they go, oh, that's all right. So it's not real. That's okay. And as soon as they knew it wasn't real, that feeling disappeared. All that fear dissipated. Another thing you could do, if you are not enjoying what's going on in the cinema, you could look behind you. I don't know if you've ever done that. So I used to do it when I was a kid. I'd see the screen, what was up on the screen. I'd look at that and I think, I wonder what the picture looks like from coming out of the projector. I look around, it's just flickering lights. Bit pretty, but it really gave me no indication of what was on the screen. A lot of people suggest that the mind is like a camera. We take what's out there and we process it, because that what's out there is actually actually what we're experiencing. But in actual fact, the mind is more like a projector. We take the energy of our mind and project it through the film of thought onto the screen of consciousness and then act like it's actually real. That what we're experiencing is real. Now, an example. Oh, there's a burn there. I remember doing that. I was very conscious of the fact that I'd done that. But this little bruise, that was years ago, but I picked up a bruise a couple of days ago. No idea where that came from. My conscious awareness was focused somewhere else. So my reality didn't include this. Didn't notice I'd been hurt. Now, why am I talking about this? You may well ask. It's because there is a missing link between our circumstances and the way we feel, and that is thought. If we think something different, we'll feel different. We'll have different body chemistry. Which is kind of neat, really. Because if you think that just by changing a thought, you have a different experience of being alive, well, that means that happiness is only one thought away. Being nervous about doing a presentation, if you notice that it's just a thought, or maybe a couple of thoughts, because very often it won't be the first thought, or the third thought, or the 30th thought. It'll be the 300th thought before you go, oh no, what am I going to do? But if you could catch it on the first thought, you go, whoa, oh, hang on, there's something wrong with my thinking here. I shouldn't be feeling like that. I'm going to be safe. The quicker you catch it, the quicker you notice that we live in a thought-created reality, the easier it is to be able to cope with things that you didn't expect. Like I expected to do a presentation to 6 people. I ended up with 40. Didn't expect that at all. Well, that's not going to help. Going into freeze, flight or fight is not going to help me at all, because I'm going to get reduced cognitive function. The blood flow is going to drain away from my prefrontal cortex, and I go out there and I'm just going to, I don't know what to say. So instantly, recognizing that it's just your thinking. You are only ever living in the feelings of your thinking. And with that understanding, that is incredibly powerful, because it doesn't matter how you're feeling. You can know and say, yeah, well, it's not my circumstances, it's my thinking. Now, your circumstances will change, and you'll have difficulty. You'll have difficulty in some circumstances and not others. But you will be more resilient. You will recover better from whatever it is that might be irking you, as soon as you recognise the nature of thought. So that's the video that you both got access to. Both. Now you know how many people are in the room. Isn't that right, Shane?
I know you that bit.
I don't mind. Yeah. I've got the one video that's on there is how to feel good. Brackets, how not to feel bad, something like that. And I go through all the different ways that we can distort and change the way we view things. And I use a number of optical illusions as examples. Now, a friend of mine, Nigel, we'll leave it at that, because I can't remember his other name. He was, this stuff that we're getting in here, we filter. In fact, I've got a nice little picture of that. Which we can put in as a slide later. We've got an external event. Something happens, and we will be able to see it, hear it, feel it maybe. But we go through some unconscious filters. You remember what I said, that you can only hold between 5 and 9 things in your mind at any one time? Now, I hadn't looked at the colour of these curtains. They had not been part of my reality. If you'd asked me when I left the room, were there curtains in there, I'd be hard pushed to tell you. So I'm deleting a lot of stuff. I'm deleting a lot of stuff that I don't need for me to be able to do what I'm doing now. I don't need to know that there's silver handles over there. I needed to know about the where the fire collection point was. So instantly that became part of my reality. But we are deleting, we're being assailed by millions of bits of information. I mean, I can see some stuff some stuff between here and the port over there. I can see a porter cabin, which I noticed the tennis court, but I didn't notice the porter cabins there. We delete so much stuff because otherwise we would be totally overwhelmed. Now I remember hearing about a paramedic that was first person on the scene of an aeroplane crash. He was triaging, going in, treating one person straight onto the other person. At the end of it, someone said, God, man, what was that like then? He said, well, the thing that struck me was just how quiet it all was. He said, are you joking? It was chaos. He completely shut off everything. Because he was busy visually and kinesthetically doing stuff, he completely deleted any sound such that he thought it was quiet, rather than thinking it was noisy but just ignoring it. So we delete a lot of stuff. Also, we generalize things. Now, I know there's a door over there. When I was a kid, I found that if it's got a handle on it, you can pull it or push it, and it opens. Okay, well, I've got one of those at home. Actually, I've got two of those at home. Well, gone to somebody else's house, their door works in the same way. So pretty soon, as a kid, I was getting used to the fact, and then I saw the push and pull. I still get that wrong sometimes, though. I don't know what you like. You pull one and go, oh, that's wrong. So you go and grab the other one and push that, and that's wrong. And then, oh, it turns out I've got to push. So yeah, it's easy. I mean, I got the hang of this. Door mark push, I push. Door mark pull, I pull. I'm still having problems getting my fingers under the door marks lift, though. Sorry. So we generalize things. We take a single or one or two examples and turn that into a life rule. Remember I was talking about the woman who was a nervous driver? She took that one example and turned that into a life rule such that she ended up never driving again. So that's deletions and generalizations. Those are really useful. But there's also distortions. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody's face in a crowd and gone, oh no, that's not who I thought it was. Now this guy Nigel I was talking about, he was walking down the road and he could see way off in the distance a couple of Muslim women pulling a black bin liner. They were head covered completely in their burqas, and as he was walking towards them, he was thinking, oh, those poor women. Aren't there anybody going to help? I could see the wind was catching them, and they would just, it almost looked like they weren't moving. And that's because as he got a little closer, he realised that they weren't moving. And the reason they weren't moving is because they weren't a they. It was a motorcycle with a black cover on it. You got the back of the bike, the front of the bike, and the middle of the bike. And he completely distorted what he was seeing. So it fitted. So he would distort it to fit in to what he was expecting, because what he thought it was from a distance. So we are continually distorting and deleting and generalizing the things that we see in order for us to get through life. So everybody else is doing this. And that's why if people are taking in sounds and visions and they're thinking in a particular way, that if you can notice how they communicate. For instance, if there's someone who... it'd be nice if I finished that sentence, wouldn't it? If you notice how people communicate and you communicate to them in the way that they expect, it makes life a lot easier. Now, here comes the example. Someone who is selling a car, and they said, what kind of car are you interested in? Said, well, I don't know what sort of stereos they have. Or what sort of stereos you got? No, instantly, this person is auditory. I'll say, imagine, just think about how quiet it is when it goes along. Stereo sounds great. You get very little noise from the tyres. And with Rolls-Royce, it used to be the only thing you can hear is the clicking of the clock, because the clock is inside. Everything else is all insulated, so it's the most silent ride and smoothest silent ride you'd have. If someone says, "Well, I haven't quite made a decision as to what car would feel right for me," feel right. Start talking about the motion of the ride. I know nobody's selling cars, but I want to give a clear example as to how you might utilize, once you notice the words they're using, that you can focus their attention onto something that is going to mean something for them. Okay, now, so that was a brief summary and a little bit more as to how this works. Of course, this external event going through through our filters creates our state, which is also driven by our internal representations. What is it we're seeing and thinking in our own mind, and also our physiology. This is something that I might as well. I was going to do it later on, but if you were to spend 2 minutes standing like this, your body chemistry will actually change. You'll have more testosterone. Your body will actually manufacture more testosterone, and it's quite amazing to think that just by altering your posture, it makes such a difference to your attitude. I think they did. I cannot remember the actual experiment, but half of the group just went on and did an activity. I don't know if it's cold calling or if they had to make some notes about how they felt. And the other half of the group were told to do the same thing after they'd been adopting some poses. Now, I've heard of people that will actually go off into the bathroom just before a presentation, shake things off, go, get the lips going so they can work their mouth, and then they stand there like that. Not necessarily in the mirror, maybe in the cubicle, and stand there and adopt a pose like that. And they go out with a different body chemistry. So your physiology actually affects your state as well. And of course, your state drives your behavior. If I'm wandering around like this the whole time, looking at my feet, and I'm just looking, I think, oh God, I know it's warm, but it looks a bit cloudy. But my internal representation and my physiology is going to create a state and therefore I'm going to behave like that. And how much fun am I going to be near? I mean, have you ever seen a presentation by somebody who doesn't want to be there? One other thing, I'm thinking about that. You never look as nervous as you feel. Now that is a great thing to understand, because if you step out there and go, oh, they can all tell I'm nervous, they can all see I'm shaking, what's that going to do? Make you more nervous, and it's going to show even more. Worst thing I just wish people wouldn't do this, and I even said to somebody, she said, oh, I'm really nervous. I said, well, don't say you're nervous, because otherwise people will be distracted by it. She got to a first stutter and said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. And that was it. Half the audience shut down at that point, just waiting for her to make another mistake. And nobody was actually listening to what she had to say. So you never look as nervous as you feel. People can't tell. And never mention if you do have nerves. I mean, you can talk about it afterwards, but and say, oh, man, is that all right? I felt really nervous. And people go, oh, we didn't notice that at all. I mean, the guy I was talking about who had difficulty, he used to avoid the 1 minute pitch. He would only go to networking events where he could avoid it. And if he was invited, he actually would worry about it for 3 weeks. And the night before, he wouldn't be able to sleep. You know, on one occasion, he got to the venue and ended up driving past it. His wife said, how was the presentation? Oh, how was the meeting? Oh, yeah, okay. He didn't tell her that he hadn't gone in, because he's got his suit on all ready to go. That frightened of it, because he thought he was going to look nervous. And that was, but, you know, profound turnaround in his attitude. When I was talking about people's joining the conversation that they're already having in their own mind, I would think back to Obama when he was just a candidate. And he would say something like, well, you imagine if he just came up and said, right, we're ready for change. Yes, we can. What kind of, doesn't. He comes up, looks around and says, we've travelled here today to this amazing room. I stand before you and we're ready for change. Because he paced their current experience. You know, if you're walking along with a friend, you'll notice that, well, it's difficult for me because all my friends have longer legs than me. But it's all right, don't get me wrong, I'm happy. As long as they reach the ground, I'm happy. But you end up finding that you're actually in step. And you know, sometimes people are with each other long periods of time, they start finishing other people's sentences, or both start talking about the same thing at the same time. You pace alongside. Now what you can do, if you try this experiment if you want, walking along walking along with someone, just slow down a little bit and see what happens. They slow down as well. Speed up a little bit, see what happens. The chances are they'll speed up. You might always get, would you just choose a speed and stick to it? But once you're pacing along someone's current experience, we've travelled here today. Well, yeah, of course. How else would we have got here? You know, we had to get here, so unless I sleep here and live here, yeah, I have travelled here today. Yeah, instantly verifiable. Into this amazing room. Now, the fact that it's amazing, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say it about, well, with this amazing view, there you go, that's all right. You can look at that and go, yeah, I suppose it's considering where we are, that's quite a lovely church and all the green. Yeah, excellent. I stand here before you. Well, yeah, I can see that. And we're ready for change. The ready for change was my suggestion. So, and this is why they're talking about the use of language. If you can pace their current experience, talk about their, where were we? Next one. Talk about their pain. Talk about the problems they're having. Talk about the challenges that they're having. Talk about the consequences of those challenges, because you've had them the same. Well, you've had customers had the same sort of thing. The difficulties and the consequences and the implications in the terms of time and money and emotional stress. And the way they have to, you know, how do you cope with that? Yeah, that's very similar to a friend of mine, or just like I used to. This is my coping mechanism. Then you can talk about your cure. So this is when you put in the suggestion that I've got the pain relievers. I've got the game creators that will enable you to get to achieve what you want to. So this is what hypnotists do this a lot, pacing along, talking about things. You know, as you sit there, you can feel the weight of the chair beneath you and the weight of your feet on the floor. You might be aware of your breathing on your hand as you relax now. So I took you inside your body to make you aware, because you weren't really aware of the weight of your body on the chair up until I mentioned it. What was that? Yeah, that bit was deleted. You had a deletion about that. Since I mentioned it, you can become aware of it. And so a hypnotist will keep saying things that are verifiable about the way you feel. And then you've noticed the last thing I said, and you're relaxing now. That was my suggestion, that you're relaxing. So it's a very powerful marketing technique, and hypnotic technique. All marketers want to hypnotize you into buying something. As long as it can become, the only time I think it's manipulative is if you're trying to convince someone to buy something that they don't need. You are aiming to provide value to a group of people so they are happy and come back. Last thing you want is buyer's remorse. Oh man, how did I get talked into doing this? And we've still got that with our current settee suite. They were sat down, glass of wine, look at all these different things. They came back with something that is just, it's quite comfortable, but enormous, way too big for our room. And sorry if you're watching people. And also, I don't know how long we've had it, 3-4 years. It's already, it needs reupholstering. We should have got it cleaned really, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Damn, I should have thought of that. So, I've got some language patterns here that you can utilise. When a simple deletion. When someone says something something is bad, oh, that's just awful. Well, who said that? How do you know that? So you can really this came from a family therapist called Virginia Satir, and the people who were inventing created neurolinguistic programming said, what is it about this woman that makes her such a great therapist? And what she would do is get really clear on the language people are using. So if someone to say, oh, they're always doing that. Well, who specifically is always doing that? Oh, people. What was it? They say that you shouldn't. They say that you shouldn't use that kind of cleaner. Who are they? I know you don't want to put it like that. But to drilling down into what someone means, if they're being really ambiguous, you've got to have a degree of rapport there but you can ask some probing questions that really get them to explain exactly what they mean in clear language, rather than them just giving you this, giving you a surface idea of what they're actually feeling. You know, because we've got an idea, a deep thought, which we then try and communicate using language. Somebody else has different deletions and generalizations and distortions. They then take it on and think, well, I wonder what this means. So they do a transderivational search. I mean, you know, they look around and think, what does he actually mean? What does he or she actually mean about this? Oh, I think I know. And this is why you can have so many arguments. I mean, I remember my mother and we were always at loggerheads because she told me I needed more discipline. I thought she meant more punishment. I thought, well, I haven't done anything wrong. What she meant was a discipline to stroke. I need more structure. So she was talking about structure, and I was thinking she was talking about punishment. So you can see that if you don't use language accurately or don't check your understanding. So this is why it's always worth asking someone, you know, just like I did earlier on. I said, is this making sense? And sometimes you just get the blank stare. I think, well, as long as someone says yes. And then that's why saying it maybe, you know, one or more times might help. Now, looking at this, there's way too many of these. I've got these on my website, if you're interested. But more important, sorry, this is just a whole lot of language patterns. This bit up here is how to drill down into what people mean, and this bit down here is how to use language in a particularly artfully ambiguous way, artfully vague. For instance, if I was to say if I was trying to hypnotize you, and I would say, feel the temperature of the air on your skin, and so you can notice the temperature of the air on your skin. If I'd have said, feel the heat of the air on your skin, and you went, what do you mean heat? I'm cold. That would take you out of the conversation. I wouldn't be pacing alongside you. All of a sudden, it seems like I've turned a corner and left without you. So those are the two things, making sure you really understand, and then when you can communicate in a way that they can fill in the blanks for you, because you don't know enough about them. But one of the most important things out of all of these, well, there's a couple. I love, I mean, you all know what a question is, don't you? Yeah. And if you've ever flown, you've got a luggage tag. So you all know what a tag is, don't you? Yeah. So these are tag questions. So a tag question would be a question you put on the end of a sentence. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, you're agreeing with me. I just used a whole lot of tag questions, put them on the end of the sentence, didn't I? Did you notice me doing it? Sorry, you didn't notice me doing it, did you? You see. So, I know a lot of marketers or salespeople talk about the yes ladder. The more you can get someone to say yes, the easier the conversation is going to become. So these tag questions, I mean, you can imagine how useful these tag questions will be, can't you? So that's one bit. As I say, this could only be manipulative if you're trying to persuade someone into doing something they wouldn't want to do in the end. But one of the most important ones is these embedded commands that people just do not know that they're doing. Now, this is perfect for me to grab a sip of water here. For instance, my daughter is walking across the room with a glass so full it's got a meniscus on it. And she's going along, I said, oh, darling, be careful, don't spill that. She stopped, looked at me and said, spill that? Spill that, Dad? Is there an embedded command in there somewhere? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Darling, can you make sure you keep the glass level? If someone's up a ladder, and you go, oh, be careful, don't fall. Fall? Why do you want to say fall? They think, oh, I suppose I might fall. Get distracted and over they go. Be careful. Make sure you hold on tightly. So when writing a letter, don't hesitate to call me again. Hesitate to call me? No. I try my best to put everything into the positive. What is the behaviour that I want them to do? Now, if I say to you, I don't want you to think about your front door. I don't want you to think of walking up towards it. I don't want you to think about it getting a little bit closer. I don't want you to think about the colour. Now, I know you both of you got two different images. I don't know which ones they are, but I know you're both thinking about your front door. It's like if I tell you not to think of a blue monkey. In order to not think about it, you've actually got to process what it is I'm talking about. And that's a blue monkey. So I mustn't think, mustn't think about that. Yeah. So always putting things in the positive. What is the behaviour you want? So and people say, oh, I want to lose my weight. My weight, so they've got ownership over it. What they actually, a better way of putting it is, I'd like to be much healthier. That way, they focus on the health rather than focusing on constantly weighing. I've got no idea how much I weigh, by the way. I said, I must stop smoking. Got to stop. You know what? The tobacco companies loved some of the smoking bans. In particular, the no smoking areas, because you'd be outside and go, no smoking? Oh man, quick, I'll have two before I go in. So people, their sales actually went up the more no smoking signs there were there.
Advertising, isn't it?
Yeah, effectively. Yeah, no, must not smoke, must not smoke, must not smoke, must not smoke, mustn't smoke, must smoke, must smoke. Yeah, I'll pick in a minute. So focus in on the behaviour that you want them to have. You want people to feel comfortable in their home whilst thinking about their business. So I mean, there was a Tai Chi guy. I was working for as a consultant at Barclays Bank in Docklands, and I every Thursday lunchtime I'd join a Tai Chi club, and every time he would say, "And let the troubles of the day fade away." I thought, "Oh man, I forgot about all my troubles. Why'd you bring those back up?" Because he just, frustrating. So make it positive. Give some examples as to how, or give some thought into what the behaviour is that you want. Always focus in on what you do want. And now I'm going to break that and say, don't focus in on what you don't. Don't, mustn't, should, shouldn't. These are all things that will focus someone's attention into the things that you want, onto something that you actually don't want them to do. So always focus in on what you do want.